Are you familiar with the controversial Binondo fire incident in the Philippines? This story happened to a medical intern at a public hospital in Manila. It was around midnight when they started talking about a big fire that had happened in Binondo, where many people got trapped and died. They were curious, so they searched online for more information. They found some really sad pictures of the victims, and just as they were looking at the pictures, they heard a loud and sad cry. It sounded like a woman's voice. Fear rose in them as they realized that it's not just their imaginations, as all of them were hearing it. The cry lasted for just a few seconds, and they started to panic. So to calm themselves down, they played some music and said some prayers. But for that intern, the memory of the sad cry terrified her, to the point that she randomly hears it till this day. This story happened to a female caregiver at a home for pregnant teenagers in the early 2000s. It was a quiet night, and all the teenagers were asleep. The caregiver was alone in the living room when she noticed something strange. A baby swing was moving by itself. The swing was old and needed to be pushed to work, so she knew nobody had touched it. She was very scared, but she tried to stay calm. She said out loud, "I'll win the swings for you, but please, don't scare us." From that night on, she made sure to win the swing every night. The other staff members did the same, hoping it would help calm the spirit of the baby. They thought maybe the baby was just lonely and wanted someone to play with, and so every night she'd win the swing, and the other staff members also did the same, thinking it might calm the lonely baby's spirit. This story happened years ago to a couple of adventurous teens who wanted to test recording sound in a cemetery. It all started when John's friend told him his idea that they would record the sound of the cemetery and check if they would capture anything paranormal. Upon arriving at the cemetery, everything seemed normal. Not until they tried their plan. At first, they recorded their voices talking. However, upon replaying it, there was a loud screaming noise in the background of their voice. John was already afraid. However, his friend still wanted to continue recording. John's friend shouted, "What's it like to be dead?" and then recorded the sound. They started to panic upon replaying their recorder. It was the sound of a painful howl, as if it was from the underground asking for help. Due to fear, both of them froze, and they started crying since they couldn't move. A few seconds later, the keeper of the cemetery arrived and called them, thinking they were just playing. This story happened to a father who lost his 5-year-old son, Eric, 10 years ago. He never found out what happened to him. Years later, his wife had another baby boy, Erickson. As Erickson grew up, the father noticed something strange. Erickson looked a lot like Eric, and they even had the same birthmarks. They also liked the same things. One day, the father took Erickson to the playground. While they were there, the father got a phone call from his wife. He had to answer it, so he walked away from Erickson for a minute. When he came back, he was shocked. Erickson was sitting under a tree, digging a hole with his finger. The father didn't know what Erickson was doing, but he decided to help him. He found a stick and started digging too. As they dug, they found something surprising. It was a small skull and a pendant that belonged to Eric. The father couldn't explain his surprise until his son, Erickson, said, "It's me, Daddy. This is where Mommy left me after she put me to sleep." This story happened years ago to a man who was driving his truck through the countryside. It was a dark night and the road was quiet and empty. As he drove, he noticed something moving slowly in the middle of the road. At first, he thought it was an animal, but as he got closer, he was surprised to see what looked like a baby. He slowed down and took a closer look. But when he got out of his truck, he realized that it was just a baby doll. Fear arose in him as he noticed that the doll was moving, as if it was being pulled by someone. However, there was no one aside from him in that area, and there were also no visible strings attached to the doll. The moment he realized that it might be a paranormal occurrence, he started to sprint going back to his truck, and immediately drove away. Until now, he's still remembering that doll every time he drives on that same road. This story happened years ago to a boy who was staying at his grandma's house in a small village in the Philippines. It was around 3 a.m. when he needed to use the bathroom, but the bathroom was outside, separate from the house. The boy was too scared to go outside alone in the dark, so he woke his grandma up to go with him. As they walked to the outdoor bathroom, the boy saw the light of a candle moving towards them. The grandma then panicked and immediately pulled the boy inside their house. When they got back inside the house, the grandma told the boy, "I'm not sure why it's walking towards us, but there's only one thing I know. We will be going to die the moment it reaches us." This story happened to a boy and his father in Tondo, Manila, Philippines in 1994. It was around 11 p.m. and the main gate of the apartment was already closed. Then suddenly, someone knocked on the door. So the father asked, "Who's there?" Yet no one replied. The knocking stopped for a bit and then started again. The father got angry and shouted, "Who's knocking? It's already late at night." But still, nobody replied. Years later in 2020, the boy had a strange dream. In the dream, he was standing in front of his childhood apartment door, knocking on it. He heard his father's voice on the other side saying, "Who's knocking? It's already late at night." But then the boy woke up, feeling sad and scared, and then he remembered his father had passed away 10 years ago. This story happened to a group of 5 friends who went to a local park during night. Everything seemed normal, not until they heard something strange. It was a woman with a creepy ambience who was singing an eerie song while swinging. At first, they neglected the woman, not until one of them noticed that the woman had no face. They started to panic and quickly got out of the park. Days later, they noticed that each of them was missing one of their things after that night. Earrings and other items that they used during their hangout. And what really shocked them was that the history of that park was that it used to be a cemetery, and that swing was exactly at the position of a grave of a woman who died while stealing jewels and accessories.